All right, we are on the old restream. I see us on YouTube. I will hit the preemptive tweet, and we are good to go. This is live before lock. It is Saturday. This is your old pal Emac coming to you with one fast Eddie Fear, and we have 7 gamer, I believe. I was getting confused because there was 2 early games. Shout out to Josh and for covering the show this morning with me with Adam. It was very helpful, and we should be back on our normal podcast schedule for next weekend. So you will get the early bird on Saturdays once again. We missed the last 2 with some holiday travel and that sort of thing, but here we are. I'm going to hit the high notes here, and then we'll turn Eddie loose. He is getting his projections, or pardon me, his rankings ready. That is our free feature of the day. So let's see. Have you uploaded those?
Yeah, 2 sets are in so far. I'm putting in a third right
Perfect.
now, dealing with.
Well, let me drop that link in chat. I know they had just set them free, literally, Sting style. But let's do this. Free Eddie projections. Or I keep calling them projections. Rankings. And then you've got, let's see, we've got all sorts of good stuff here. We have Super Draft as our sponsor for Saturday night. A nice little promo with them yesterday. You guys missed out for a free $20. Literally a free $20. I think we had 531 people take advantage of that.
What did you have to do for your free $20?
You needed to sign up and use the promo code AWESOMO20.
Wow.
And it was good up until lock yesterday. So it was
I would have been ineligible for all the reasons, I imagine, but still, that's like, were you allowed to?
I'm already a member there, so
right. That's all right. Okay, but were other Osmo people? I'm just wondering, if
I don't know. I think most of us have already signed up there already. But
as well, you should. I'll take this opportunity to say for the 8,000th time, nothing I or EMAC nor anyone else on this side of the microphone says to you is as valuable as overlay. Overlay is obviously how much matters, but free money, overlay, contest selection, those things are massively critical.
It is very, very, very key. Very, very key. So you can find those loving little overlay spots every now and then. Check them out on not only Super Draft, who that is their intended marketing gambit or strategy is going to be overlay. They are running, I believe it's a $50,000 contest tomorrow morning that has been going off for the majority of the season. I think it started out at 100,000. They're working their way down. It's 30,000 now, but their intent is to make sure that has about 10% of overlay in it. So that is something that is very, very valuable for you guys. So it's a $20 entry fee. They've got some smaller contests if you prefer, $3 entries, some single entries, 50-50s, double ups. You can play head-to-heads. They do accept CSV uploads, and they are supported by Fantasy Cruncher. And we do have projections for them now. You're going to say, oh, EMAC, you got projections for a lot of stuff. But here's the difference with Super Draft. They do not have salary caps. Each player has a multiplier. So what they've done is they've approximated a multiplier that will get people somewhere between 1 and 2, but it kind of levels the playing field, if you will. But then you need to figure out if there's wiggle room in them. So someone last night, like Serge Ibaka, had like a 1.55 multiplier, so he was a key person to play. If you get somebody like Giannis Antetokounmpo, they'll probably have a 1 multiplier. So that's kind of how that works.
I like it.
Have you done that game format before, Eddie? In your travels?
I'm familiar with the same thing. It's really, and I mean this with all due respect, just sort of the inverse math.
Yes.
I mean, in DFS, you have X money, you're subtracting salary. In that case, you're taking guys with higher I mean, it's sort of the same thing. There was, what was it? Not Fantasy Hub, but you know what I'm talking about. There was another outfit.
There was a pot in it. Draft pot.
Yeah, draft pot. Now gone, unfortunately. Lovely mobile interface, by the way. Probably best mobile interface we've ever seen in the industry. Had something similar where there was, although their main format was was literally you could pick everyone. Because they didn't have a multiplier. They just had pick X players. So it was very weird. And they had another format that was similarly basically salary cap, but with a twist like that. But the math here is much more intuitive. It's a little more user friendly, where you don't have to factor in salary, just player projection and then a multiplier. I like it. There's still a lot of choices to be made.
And that's the key, because that is where we find our helpful. You know what would be helpful if I could ever get these frames set. But there we go. That would be our help. No, you're good. You're good. Right? No, no, you fucked everything up.
You also channeling my wife. All right.
All right. So let's hit a few of the. I figure we can bounce around to the good stuff. We had full show today. Technically 3 of them because the stream crashed twice on Josh and Adam.
Now, when you say that, I wanted to ask, because not as many people catch the morning show. Am I right? There was no full Lofty, etc. preceding us.
But we got the deep dive behind the paywall, free articles, all the good stuff. Your player pool is free again today, so everybody, if you guys have not checked
that is also a player pool, by the way. Yes. Literally, if they are on that list, if I was playing 150 lineups, I would play them. I'd have at least one share, and how much can be reasonably denoted by the letters. If they're not on the list, I'd have 0. Is what I'm saying by excluding them from the list. So you'll run into players tonight where right now I have not ranked Frank Kaminsky, because right now I would not play Frank Kaminsky at $6,200. There's just a number of ways it goes wrong, and if I find out that he's in and Saric is out and Rubio is out and he's starting, that would obviously change that situation, and I would try to update that as quickly as possible. But it is also a list of players I would have any shares of,
which is helpful because you can download it, also upload it, and there are ways you can designate SuperDraft Fantasy Cruncher to help you out with bringing in Eddie's rankings. If you look at any of my free daily cash building blocks article, there is a Fantasy Cruncher tip of the day, and yesterday I talked about how you can create your own data field or category and upload it into Fantasy Cruncher, and then you can not only can you see it, there's also a place where you can utilize that into your rules. So in addition to uploading projections and exposures and randomness or standard deviation, boom bust, stuff like that, you can upload a variety of data, and that is one of the things you can do with Eddie's player pool. And help you out. And you could set rules, or what it'll do is make it easier for you to say, hey, everybody in this column that says A, I want to set them in and bring them into this group. And everybody that says B, I want to bring them into this group. And then you can create some stuff around it. So there's a lot of fun ways to play around with that. But let's get into the good stuff. We just found out Derrick Rose is out. This was a back-to-back. Blake Griffin is also out. We should have Luke Kennard back. And Andre Drummond took it easy in the fourth quarter last night. I don't recall that he actually played, so he should be okay on this back-to-back. Moritz Wagner is out for the Wizards. Let's see. Wesley Matthews still dealing with a bruised quad. We kind of want him out because that helps out Dante DiVincenzo and then George Hill, but Eric Bledsoe also being out does aid those guys. Giannis is playing. This is a matchup against New York in Madison Square Garden, so who knows if that will keep them on the court much longer than they need to be, but we'll see. We do not know what's going on with Bogdan Bogdanovic. He has missed a couple games here and there. Has been dealing with a variety of injuries, thigh, calf, now it's an ankle. So it's kind of turning into a lost season for him, but we have De'Aaron Fox back, as well as Marvin Bagley III. So that's crowding that rotation just a bit. Rudy Gay not feeling well. We'll have to see what happens. He is questionable. You've got JaMychal Green, who's missed a few games with a bruised tailbone. DeAndre Ayton sat out his 25 games, came back for part of a game, sprained his ankle. He's out. Eric Gordon, not yet back from rehab. He has limited practice with the team, or he's doing basketball-related activities. I think that just means he's shooting free throws or something, but we'll have to see what's going on with him. Ricky Rubio, doubtful. They're saying probably unlikely to play. They just haven't ruled him out yet. He's sick. You've got Carmelo Anthony, hurt his knee. He said he was going to play. He is not playing, so that means we can have some Kent Bazemore. And then here's where you want to look for your plans. If you've been playing on draft or play draft, they've been doing a bunch of four-mans today. Karl Anthony Towns is questionable. He has missed his last game, which I think was the 7th of his career or something like that, with a sore knee. But if you are picking in the four-mans and you have Hassan Whiteside left and Karl Anthony Towns, you can take Karl Anthony Towns if you're the last person taking a center. Yeah. And if he is ruled out, you can late swap in to Hassan Whiteside. So that was something I was doing today just for fun. You got to be careful because sometimes you can get swapping into somebody that's not as good because I was playing some of the games that had Rudy Gobert there as well. Hey, it's not on this slate, but he did have a double-double in the first quarter.
Yes, he did. That's always good. And Towns actually has missed 2 games again. He's missed,
Okay.
I think, but he missed the last 2 games. He didn't suit up for either of those.
All right, perfect. So,
Also worth talking about just a quick sort of scheduling concern. Like everybody's on a back-to-back.
I have the list for you if you'd like it
Yeah,
real quick.
it's almost easier to go through the 3 of the 14 teams. Not
So Washington, Philadelphia, Detroit, New York, Memphis, Sacramento, Portland, Minnesota are all on back-to-backs. Second half tonight. Playing tomorrow are the Clippers, Hornets, which doesn't matter, but the Bucks are also playing tomorrow.
right, which is really, I think, relevant in addition to the potential blowout. I mean, the Bucks. I really like a lot of the Bucks in the event that you think they play 4 quarters. They played the Knicks already once this year, beat them by 44. Like I want to like Elfrid Payton, who I think we're going to get news is starting any minute. But again, this is a team where they're more than happy to throw them in at 17 ways from the wind, and it's going to be less usage and potentially less time if he starts, considering guys who didn't start might very possibly play the entire fourth quarter. So it's, you can almost start at this top talking about Giannis. Giannis, if you ignore blowout potential, is the best pay up on the slate. I would right now rather play James Harden, probably between Harden and Giannis, for a number of reasons, including the fact that Houston is one of could be 4. I'm not going to take time to figure it out. 3 or 4 teams on the slate, not on a back-to-back. And D'Antoni tends to run those guys into the ground. And I have a pretty strong read that we should see the Westbrook Harden recent role reversal swappity to back to the way it has been, and that had something to do with the Clippers matchup, and then the previous games before that, just some sort of abnormal numbers. So we have seen, obviously, you wanted basically Westbrook for the last 5 games over Harden. I'm not inclined to think that continues, and were I to factor in the blowout in projections, which I do, I have James Harden scoring more points tonight than Giannis Antetokounmpo more often than not, because I'm taking that into account. If you think Giannis plays 34, 36 minutes and plays 4 quarters, yeah, he should absolutely maul the Knicks. But I think given Budenholzer's propensity to already run the minutes about as wide and deep as he can for a number of guys, and the back-to-back tomorrow, and playing the moribund Knicks, I have some very real concern there. But make a decision. It's tough because it's really hard to go with anyone on the Knicks who don't even have consistent blowout run with who's playing the 4 or the 5 or the 1. Has changed in the last few games. They've gotten blown out from game to game, so really difficult to feel terribly comfortable with any of those guys. But a really interesting position when you're looking at anyone on the Bucks for that reason.
All right. Questions coming in, so let's handle Detroit next. You've got questions about Zvi getting any little bump. We have everybody's favorite disappointment from last night, Langston Galloway. Lining up for potentially even more minutes if that's possible. What do you want to do here with DeAndre Drummond and the also-rans?
I love Andre Drummond, and I love him even more now. This one of a couple games on the slate for tonight we've actually seen twice already. This will be the 3rd time for the Midwest tilt between the Pistons and the Bulls. I have Drummond, I think, as my 4th highest projected scoring player, and there's a lot of guys projected pretty high tonight. I'm a massive fan of his in this spot. While there are other teams in other positions competing for the honor, center against Chi-Town is still really the best spot you can land in as a fantasy basketball player. Getting Derrick Rose out of there and getting Blake Griffin out of there are even further bumps that way. In the 2 previous games you played this year, you had one game for Drummond, which he saved with some nice stocks, where everyone was healthy, and they had Rose and Kennard, who has been in and out, and Blake Griffin in that game, and Andre Drummond had a pretty anemic by his standards in 34 minutes. In a game they also lost by 20, so he lost a couple minutes at the end. Drummond had 6 points, 14 rebounds, because, of course, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. before fouling out, actually, in that game, in the game they played where Rose was in, but Blake wasn't around. Drummond had 25 and 24 with 2 assists and 2 steals and 3 blocks. I can't project him for quite this, Jan 70 burger here. But Drummond without Blake, for those of you who can go way back in the day to 2 months ago when the season started, it's really a thing, and the spot doesn't get much better. FanDuel, it's not much of a decision for me. DraftKings, you can get into an interesting Joel Embiid conversation and what's just very nearly, if not slightly more of a sexy matchup at this point, because center versus the Wizards has been quite a thing the entire year. And again, DVP or positional rankings aren't an incredibly good idea. You can look at any number of teams from the Pacers to the Clippers where they have real issues against some guys, but not necessarily against others. This is, again, a spot where you're going to look at Pasnix and Schofield and Mahinmi trying to do what they can to stop Embiid. But with Embiid entirely, with the 76ers entirely healthy at this point, I would rather throw my spoon on Drummond at this point. But it'll be interesting to see the differential in ownership as we get closer to lock. But it would have to be pretty well tilted. If you're looking at 30 Drummond, 10 Embiid, that's about the point where I'd have a decision on DraftKings, where I'd look at it for a while.
Would you set any groups related to Detroit getting too many, I guess, would be the issue?
I have to run ranks again and put Mikhailuk in. Thank you for someone who just reminded me again. It is site dependent because you are dealing with, on DraftKings, I would still rather play Markieff Morris than Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard's fine to play. $5,100 Luke Kennard is just fine in anything you want to throw him in. If he's going to remain one of the most popular players on the slate, if I were playing, would intentionally differ because he just is a guy who does have a floor. This is a defense when you're dealing with Laurie and Wendell where it's just much easier to come in down low. The path of least resistance is not Luke Kennard jacking up threes. And even when he has a good game, he can have an incredible paucity of peripheral stats. You can get 25 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist. Is not a weird Luke Kennard game. He was almost right out of play for me when his price got up into the 6s and change. 5,100 is a perfectly tolerable price tag, and even better if I recall correctly on FanDuel. So no issue with you getting to some Luke Kennard, but if he holds as super ownership guy, I would consciously make a decision to go somewhere else. I'm curious how high Bruce Brown gets up to. I like him, but I expect people to move pretty strongly to that point too. So would I set any groups? I would not take probably Thon McCurr and Markieff Morris. I guess I'd exclude them from being in the same lineup, and I do think they're both in play. On FanDuel, Markieff Morris is a brilliant play. I don't know what his ownership's projected at there, but he should be close to, if not the highest owned guy in the slate. DK, he's priced appropriately. So, that's a bit more of a conversation. But I would have groups to make sure that in 150 lineups, I would end up with some, depending on the site, 20 or 40 Markieff Morrises and 1 to 3 Thon McCurrs. I'd try to make sure those didn't overlap. I would probably make sure that my Svi Mikhailuks and my Langston Galloways don't overlap. They can potentially both get there, but again, it really isn't the best matchup for them. So I wouldn't have both of them. That's about it. I guess I could tolerate like Bruce Brown, Luke Kennard. I'm not thrilled with that. I don't think I'd want any, but I don't look at that as being as obviously negatively correlated that I would rule against it. But I don't think it'd be crazy if someone also set that up as a restriction.
All right. Whiteside, Wiggins, McCollum, or Booker. Can you rank those? That is a DK tiers question. And it looks like tier 3. So it's raw points.
It's tough to guess on the ownership, but I imagine I would play that as Booker now. In the event Towns is out, I would swap it to a will be under-owned Wiggins relative to the field. Okay. Presuming that news comes out post 7 Eastern.
And we should have time for that. So, Because
So
the Houston game, I think, is at 8 o'clock?
I think it's 9.
9?
I think
Okay.
that game is quite late. If it was 8, I would handle the entire slate a little bit differently because there's just a couple moving pieces in a couple games. But I'm pretty sure that one is a 9 o'clock game.
All right. Next one, let's hit on kind of on Philadelphia. So you mentioned a lot of the Wizards are out. Philadelphia is favored by 12 at home. Wizards are on a back-to-back. So you got Ish, you got Isaiah, you got Bertans, you got Beal. That's kind of about it for favorable Wizards. I guess Troy Brown Jr. On the other side, are you worried about guys not getting much run? We've seen some disappointing games here recently from Tobias Harris. Al Horford's kind of been taking it easy. And I can't remember where they were. No, they're not playing tomorrow. What else? What do you have here for Philadelphia thoughts?
Well, the 76ers played yesterday.
Yes, they did.
They had Dallas yesterday, I believe. I was off yesterday, but I'm pretty sure they played Dallas yesterday. And the Wizards are also on a back-to-back. They're on the tough East back-to-back on the road in Toronto and tonight Philly. But yeah, for those two teams, I'm not like Beal is simply well too cheap on DraftKings. $8,600 is very cheap. You have some really interesting plays in that area with Booker for a little bit less and Kawhi Leonard for literally the smallest increment less possible. But Bradley Beal is always going to be a pretty solid play at 8,600. So that's sort of an ownership play for me, but I would make sure to have some. I do think the matchup is legitimately difficult. Again, last time these teams got together, I lost a healthy bet on the 76ers with the Wizards taking that game outright. Sad to say, but yeah. So Beal, I'm fine with. Bertans, I have ranked as double Bs. The volume is going to be there. The minutes are going to be there. FanDuel, I'm obviously well more excited to get there for both the positionality and 6K versus 7K is a very relevant difference. 7K on DraftKings, this is a brilliant defensive team that is still hitting its stride. And you have almost everybody getting healthy. I expect them to, for some reason, my database isn't responding to me right now, and I won't go look up the box score, but from memory in that last game, they really focused on shutting Beal down. I can see that, turning into a game for Isaiah Thomas or Davis Bertans, but 7K on DK on the slate where there's a lot of guys I feel are kind of egregiously underpriced. I want like 45 out of Davis Bertans. Can that happen? Sure, but there's nowhere easy for him to get up those shots. So FanDuel, I'm just fine with whatever you get. DraftKings, I'm fairly disinclined. I have to give him a B in cash because dude's gonna play. I think I am projected for 38 minutes, and there is an upside to be achieved. But there are other places I would rather go, and I expect he's not based on just his brilliant play recently and guy can shoot. There's other places I would probably rather spend $7,000 tonight than Davis Bertans in my first lineup. If I'm building 150 lineups, yeah, I'll have a dozen, 15, 18 Davis Bertans, but not a priority for me. Past that, Yamahimi is perfectly happy to go with, but massive foul trouble potential situation dealing with Joel Embiid, and they'll do all sorts of things at center there. They'll obviously put Andrzej Pacniks out there for as much time as he can suck up against Embiid. That's kind of cute, especially I think 3,700 is the DK tag. I'd have a little bit, but this is a legit defense, and oddly a Wizards team that while it is shorthanded, runs everyone a pretty even number of minutes. Beal is pretty safe that he's going to get, all the time he can handle. Bertans at this point, but even with Hachimura out, and I hope his Ginobilis get better soon, they're really messing it around a little bit. So not a ton to like for me on a team that really just isn't priced down relative to some of the other guys today. In a really difficult matchup with the 76ers. As far as the 76ers go, ended up with double A's on both Embiid and Simmons. Simmons, especially that FanDuel price, is obviously pretty attractive. Embiid is fairly matchup proof anyway, but if he wasn't, there's very little cap to what he can get. I would rather see guys out to just get him some more usage than see him in such a brilliant matchup, because they're all kind of brilliant matchups for him. And there's times where it's like, okay, we'll just space the floor and Joel's going to beat anybody 1-to-1 and he gets more action. Or there's this game is great for Simmons because of how much they move in transition, which can actually end up being tough for Embiid. And it's a good matchup for everyone. So instead of Tobias Harris, taking 11 shots and, taking it easy a little bit, well, he's got some great matchups, so he's going to take some shots. So it actually concerns me a little bit how good the matchup is for Embiid, just because it's equally as good for everyone. But Horford, Harris, Simmons, and Embiid are all A's and GPPs for me. Simmons and Embiid are A cash plays for me. Harris, just the price. Again, it's a DraftKings commentary at the moment, $7,500. Just fine. Prefer him at $7,500 than Bertans across the ball, for example. But still shots upon it again. Everyone has a pretty great matchup on this team. But I would make sure to have some. And Josh Richardson at 6K is just a little too much for me at this point. He's not 100%. And that's sort of the same determination with Al Horford. On a back-to-back, not the youngest guy there anymore. The minutes reduction is a bit of a real thing for him recently. You're dealing with some blowouts and one game of foul trouble. But the other thing is he's got two sort of lingering leg injuries. And, after a tough Dallas game, I would not be shocked, not unlike the Bucks, to see them go a little bit easy on these guys here. Outside of those 5 starters, the only player who got a ranking for me is minimum price Trey Burke, who I would have in 1% of lineups. Because at this point, he's the one I'm most confident in a blowout having some sort of very significant upside, and he costs 3,000. So again, correlate that significantly with a blowout. If you randomly use these rankings and throw Trey Burke into 3 lineups, try to make sure those 3 lineups don't have Bradley Beal and Joel Embiid in them, because those things wouldn't correlate well.
All right. Next question here. People are saying we're getting a lot of Cam Johnson in our lineups. Let's just assume Rubio is. Go ahead.
Well, unless we got other Phoenix news, that's like I need.
Who do you
certainly
need out?
You want Saric out. Without Saric out, I'm not doing flips over Cam Johnson. Like I like Cam Johnson just fine as a player. Rubio out is in theory by extension going to help him a little bit. Ayton out in theory can help him, because if they're trying to give Frank 26 minutes and he's can get more of them at the 5, he doesn't need to get him at the 4. And Cam Johnson Cam Johnson can very ably play the 2, the 3, or the 4. So I'm fine in a very good matchup with getting to Cam Johnson, but I want dudes out first. Right now, I would much rather play Elie Okobo, and I would have to sit there and look at like Elie Okobo and Javon Carter for a while before I went to Cam Johnson. Ty Jerome would come back into the rotation. There's just a lot of ways Cam Johnson right now plays 23 minutes, and $3,700 Cam Johnson in this matchup can do plenty of damage. He's not going to be a bad play regardless, but he'll be the more popular of all these value plays we're talking about, aside from Okobo. I do think Okobo starts this game. Obviously, I do think there's a lot going on with this team, and I think this is really the critical spot to talk about tonight. So this will be the 6th game of the year Ricky Rubio has missed. Javon Carter started the first 2. Tyler Johnson started the latter 3 of the 5 that he has previously rested. Depending on who else is out, I wouldn't be surprised if TJ continued to get that he doesn't play. If you got news that he was starting, I'd be absolutely fine to windmill him in there. He's minimum price, and at that point, I'd project for 27 minutes or something, and it's a matchup I really like. I really like Dario Saric if he plays. He's played some 5. We'll get some time at a 4, obviously. The price on FanDuel is pretty delicious at $4,500, so I sort of have a Dario Saric plan. He is the one I am least concerned with. He's just dealing with like lingering soreness. So I'm a pretty big fan of Dario Saric if you can get in there. I'm a big fan of Devin Booker. Big fan of Devin Booker on FanDuel. The there is sort of a Booker Harden thing we've seen a number of times now. They played earlier this year. I was huge on James Harden that day. If I recall, he shot I think it was 8 for 27 with 3 for 17 from 3 was his line in that game on his way to 59.5 fantasy points, or all that's correct, give or take one either side. So, yeah, again, big James Harden fan, but he and Booker kind of have a thing, and Booker certainly carries some upside. And it's tough on FanDuel where Booker is exceptionally priced because his name isn't James Harden and his name isn't Lou Williams, and he's a shooting guard. So you got to do something else I don't like even more to play him. But have we seen confirmation, by the way, that Kawhi Leonard is going to play this game?
We have not 100% yet, but
I'm just saying it's the front end of a back-to-back.
It is.
I think he plays. I'll give him 8-1 right now or something, but
he's familiar with the shooting backdrop here.
I'm not bumfuzzled if he sits. I'm just saying I would be surprised. And again, I think the location makes it even more likely he suits up and plays. Not for vengeance reasons, but for they want to see him, he wants to see them type dealio. But I'd really like to see starting lineup there on FanDuel. $9,100 Kawhi is very nice. $8,500 on DK is brilliant. He's been hit or miss against the Spurs, but I really like Kawhi Leonard. But I think I would not be doing my job if I didn't put out I have a non-zero chance that Kawhi Leonard doesn't play in this evening's game. So hopefully an update comes through about that. It's another one that this is actually the third meeting between these two teams. And in one of those games, Kawhi had, I think it was 38 and 12 and assorted other stats for 65, 70 fantasy points. Although that was a Paul George-less less game. We've seen some monster lines against this Spurs defense who frequently can give up the ghost a little bit. We just saw Spencer Dinwiddie bludgeon his way to basically his career best game, if I recall correctly. That was against the Spurs. As I frequently will, have quite a bit of interest in the big four fantasy-wise with the two guys off the bench and the two starters for the Clippers. We talked about a lot on the last show. It didn't work out great. I was a fan of the two bench guys more in that game. And Lou Williams got ejected in his 17 minutes, and Montrez was fine. He was 50 whatever on one side and put up a little over 30, I think. Shot 75% from the field. He shot 9 for 12. He had a good game. Didn't have quite enough volume to crush that price. Kawhi, you didn't want, but Paul George did take a disproportionate amount of the volume there and have a monster game. I'm not super narrative guy, but I also don't like to pretend they don't exist. I already think that over the course of the year, Kawhi will be a better fantasy contributor than Paul George more often than not. And I do think it leans a little more that way when you're playing San Antonio. Not massively. But if on your average day, I said, I think Kawhi Leonard outscores Paul George 62 to 38. If they're playing San Antonio, it'd be 65 to 35 for me or something. I don't think these are things that should be included in models most of the time. But just because something is difficult to pin down, difficult to quantify, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I like Kawhi Leonard quite a bit tonight. Obviously, DraftKings, the price is superior and there's no risk. FanDuel, again, I'm thinking he's, beyond 90% to play. So I'm not super worried about having Kawhi Leonard in my lineups. But, I don't put it past Doc to all of a sudden have him, I'll play tomorrow.
All right. Couple super chats here.
Okay.
FanDuel GPP. Would you play DeJounte Murray and Brandon Clark or Jeff Teague and Randall?
That's tough. The only player there who I legit think I like more than the field would be Jeff Teague. Jeff Teague, again, you need / want Towns out, does still carry a massive upside and is coming off just having some woeful shooting issues, but I still have him at 30 minutes and a very nice bucket of fantasy points for his salary. So I'm especially FanDuel where he's 5,400, I think is the number. 59 on DK is tolerable. I like him. FanDuel is sitting in my one GPP lineup right now. I'm a fan of Jeffers tonight. So I will probably end up taking Teague and Randall there for that reason. What was the other side exactly?
Sorry, it was Joval's out. By the way, it was
Oh, okay. Well,
Dejounte Murray and Clark,
okay.
or
Well, Joe
Teague
Val,
and Randall.
yeah. Joe Val being out obviously changes things quite a little bit. So Clark should start at center. During the games J Val has missed this year, there was one in which Clark also missed, and in the second game J Val missed, Clark was coming back from injury. I think they were back-to-back games, if memory serves, and he did get the start. So I do expect Brandon Clark to start, and I legit like him now. So that would actually be a really tough decision for me. That's actually, knowing that J Val is out, that would actually turn it for me. I would now play the Clark DeJounte side. I am after feeling like I was driving the DeJounte Murray train for a couple of years, I keep being seemingly less enthused than other people. Uh, he obviously has ceiling spike games, but I would rather spend up for and have ranked strictly higher than him DeMar DeRozan tonight. Again, we've seen this game a couple times before, and the way it has played out repeatedly ends up with DeRozan having the lion's share of the usage. I didn't look at the boxes from that, but I seem to. Here, I'll just pull those because I also want to make sure I got the Kawhi number right on that other thing.
And Clark is coming off the bench.
Okay, well, now that changes everything again. So have they released an entire starting lineup?
They have not.
Okay, so we'll assume that they start Crowder, Morant, Brooks, Triple J. I'm not really sure where they're going to go with that last spot in this particular. I can see it going a couple of ways. We'll find it out, and we'll go back to it when we find it out.
All right.
So let's. Where is? All right. So here's this box score. Kawhi 38 and 12. Yeah, with an assist and 4 steals in that game. That was sans Paul George. I only have him projected for, I think, 47 tonight, which is a perfectly fine number at 8,500 and doesn't suck much at 9,100. But it's not all that. But looking at the Spurs, all right. So in this first game, you ended up with DeRozan taking 21 shots. The other starters took 8, 8, 5, and 2. That includes 36 minutes of Aldridge, who, even though they put him down at center, saw copious amounts of Kawhi in that game, and it was very relevant in the second meeting where everyone was together. This one I was a little less sure about. DeMar DeRozan took 16 shots. Aldridge got up to 13 in that one. And again, that's because there's a second primary defender out there. But at what I expect to be nominal ownership and an appropriately reduced price for being bad. And this is not a guy's name I've called a lot this year. 60 shows in. I've recommended DeMar DeRozan 3 times now. But at his ownership and at that price, that's, again, on FanDuel, tough because his name isn't Lou Williams and his name isn't James Harden. So I'd be a couple lineups in before I got to him, but I would have more than the field on DeMar DeRozan. And I imagine, without having looked at his ownership projection, that I'd still have a little less than DeJounte Murray. I like DeJounte Murray just fine, but pace nice and everything, but obviously a significant number of fine defenders there. And based on what I've seen, having watched those games the first time, I'd be a little more inclined to spend up an extra $900 or what have you and play DeMar DeRozan. I don't have any of them as priorities.
All right. This is a 3-way, and it's actually a decent one. So this is single entry DK.
I'm listening.
Pair 1, Lillard and Kawhi. Pair 2, Harden and Clark. Joval out, Harden or Clark off the bench. Pair 3 is basically DiVincenzo or Clark. And we've had a couple people asking about, if DiVincenzo's starting, does he get blowout run?
No, if he starts, he would likely not get blowout run. I have some precedent for that, but I'm going to pause and double check that because I don't quite have everything memorized yet. And my inclination is that when he started, he didn't in the one blowout run game I remember in which he started, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm actually going to go back and see if I can find what would be the closest thing we have to some precedent there. And again, this is no guarantee of anything, but it's the easiest way for me to make a guess at it. Find it. Um, and he did not get. I'm while looking through for the one I was looking for. I'm looking at a game against the Pistons where they finally basically completed the blowout towards the end of the fourth quarter, and he didn't get blowout run in this game, and he didn't start. Um, I assume have we announced? I'm just gonna take a quick back at my entire news feed because I need to look at things. Bogdan is out. That's pretty relevant. So if anything jumps out and seems wicked important, I would want to suspend everything else and talk about it. West Matt is out. That's expected. Clark will remain off the bench. Yeah. So okay. So I am now up to date. I like Brandon Clark quite a bit as a player. The matchup is above average to me. But the price is Eric. I got to double check his price because for some reason I'm just having a mental block on Brandon Clark.
He's 58 on DK.
That's what I thought. All right, so that's a fine number, but there are other guys in that range I feel a little more comfortable with that are bringing me similar upside. And I want to let me contextualize this. Look at a couple other things. 58. I want some chance that he like really does the nasty, and I don't think all of a sudden, especially coming off the bench now, like if he starts, you can say I think he's going to play 31 minutes. Okay, that'd be pretty exciting for me. I like that. Good fantasy player. At that point, I'd have to project him for 35 fantasy points with a decent chance of hitting an upside of 43 or 44. But if you told me that Brandon Clark, I think Brandon Clark has one 40 fantasy point game this year. And just cusp it. I'm trying to. I will. I want to make sure I get this correct. Nailed it. 40.8 in one game this year, and then 36 in the second highest, then 32, 31, 31, 31, so on and so forth. And this is in plenty of good matchups and playing what he tends to 24, 25, 26 minutes. I think we can safely say that we would not expect his rotation to massively change now. So, I think I guess you are looking at potential upside minutes from Triple J getting into foul trouble, which is certainly something he is want to do. But whole lot of Brandon Clark questions coming in, and I feel like a roll slowing would be appropriate there. I like Brandon Clark. I think Brandon Clark at $5,800 should be 15, 17, 18% owned. If he's going to be 35% owned, I want absolutely none of that jazz. Fine player, good player. I would be less excited. Looking at new ownership, Kennard just over the moon, 36% Luke Kennard. Yeah, no. He's fine. There's a lot of ways to play that. In my opinion, that number is significantly too high. No Derrick Rose, very, very helpful stuff. Price at a much more tolerable point here. It's a good, solid play on a very juicy slate. He does not deserve to be the highest owned player by 10%. So I would play very little or none. I would recommend that you play less than that. If you think it's a great spot, you're like, hey, even though, maybe he manages to isolate Zach LaVine the entire game and the two very good defensive guards who play around him don't manage to limit Kennard and he goes off and is the man. But that's very possible. But he's not the world's best at creating his own shot, and he's not the world's best at slipping defenders. So I have trouble seeing it. I think he's great. If he was 15% owned, I'd be like, I'd like that. I'd like a little more. He's 35% owned. I don't feel the need to do that. So yeah, I don't see Brandon Clark on the top page of ownership. So I'm fine with getting some Brandon Clark there, but just keep in mind it's not the Kings are playing at a very anemic pace. Obviously, having Fox back on the court is going to continue to kick that up. So they will not be the slowest team in the league or terribly close to it, but they're going to struggle to get back over average. So I guess it's the full context of my comments there.
All right, so back to this pairs, Lillard and Kawhi.
Yeah.
or Harden and Clark? I'm assuming you'd prefer Clark over DiVincenzo.
I never really got an answer on the DiVincenzo blowout thing, but
It's
I
okay.
will.
We got 15 minutes left. I
Then
suspect.
I will simply say I think it is unlikely, but not impossible. If DiVincenzo starts with the superfluity of wings they have on that team, some of whom are certainly on the young side, I would say I'd give 2-1 against that he plays blowout run. But it depends on how much blowout run there is and a couple of other things. But I would be disinclined to think he plays the blowout run. Of those pairings, I would probably play Kawhi Leonard and Damian Lillard. Lillard has been continually under-owned by just a little bit too much. I really enjoy this matchup for him. The price is just still on the downside. Now he's actually 6th in our ownership. He's up to 19%. So good job there. And he should be. This is a Minnesota team that they used to call molasses because they give it up so sweet. And especially point guards have put up any number of superlative performances here. I'm not concerned with any of the individual defensive matchups. A little concerned they absolutely smashed the piss out of them. But yeah, I would by a little margin go with the first one there out of those teams. And again, everyone here also on a back-to-back. The Wolves had the rough night in Denver last night, and then the Trailblazers had the Magic last night. Yeah, the Magic, I think it was. So Nasir Little, I have a little interest in. Haha. Not being on the injury report at all, obviously, with no Melo there, but nothing super to target here. If Towns is out, Wiggins will go under-owned. That's just gonna happen. It's not by any means a really difficult matchup for him. So, if at all possible, have a double swap with Lillard and Wiggins and 2 other guys. Or the news will probably be out by 9, but not necessarily regarding Towns. If Towns is out, late swapping to Wiggins is probably the largest edge I see on the slate right now because none of the ownership is egregious. $5,100 Kennard at 35% is too high, but it's not like it's some horrific fish play that is going to sink everyone. So, yeah, I like. I would significantly rather play. I don't know what you did, Emac, but I just got a blast of audio feedback.
Sorry.
That's okay. Just lost an eardrum there. I would rather play Elie Okobo than any of these other chalky plays we're talking about. I think it is likely I'll go 60-40 that he catches the start. I think he's somewhere around 26 minutes. He's $3,200 in a matchup I'm a pretty big fan of. I would rather play Elie Okobo than, I don't know, a guy who, you're going to get an extra dozen minutes out of Luke Kennard. I don't think that's worth an extra $1,900, and it's, an extra 50% minutes for an extra 65% price. So if this is where they're going to end up being owned, I would probably take the risk on Okobo with also the understanding that you can make swaps around because that game is late if you're playing on DraftKings. FanDuel, it's a slightly more complicated situation. FanDuel, my favorite guy in that team is going to be Kelly Oubre. Pretty significantly, $5,900 is too cheap. Small forward, much like shooting guard, where I have trouble getting away from Lou Williams and James Harden. I have a lot of trouble getting away from Kelly Oubre and Marcus Morris.
All right.
So now I've basically given you at least like 60% of a lineup because I said these are 2 shooter guards, these are 2 small forwards, and I mentioned the center pretty praisefully at the beginning. So that's it. I'm not giving.
All right, we're down to 10 minutes here, so I'm answering. If people are asking, you're asking Slack questions that I already know Eddie's answer to. I'm going to put in here for us. Okay. Booker or Kawhi, DK Cash?
In cash, I would play Kawhi Leonard.
All right. How would you prioritize Wiggins, Booker, and DeRozan? No site given.
I would prioritize Booker right now. I do like him more if Towns plays. I like Wiggins almost exactly the same, and at ownership, well more if Towns does not. So, not knowing site, I would play Booker right now. If the possibility to swap arises later and Karl Anthony Towns is out, I would change to Andrew Wiggins.
Knicks are starting Peyton, RJ Barrett, Marcus Morris, Julius Randle, and Taj Gibson.
Yep, that's what I expected.
How would you do for Elf? this
Yeah,
holiday
Peyton
season.
started the second half last game, and they said they'd consider starting him going forward. And in the last 20 years, I've heard a coach say, we're going to think about starting this guy going forward maybe 40 times. And the guy started the next game like 39 of them because you've officially already cut the legs out from under the other guys. So you just kind of have to go with it when you're like, hey, I'm thinking about it. You kind of got to go. What does it do for Elf? It obviously increases his ceiling. He's fine really to play in anything. I don't think the ownership is going to skyrocket because of this news, but keep in mind now he's not getting bench super usage he can control, and he's got to share with Marcus Morris and Julius Randle and other guys, and RJ Barrett, of course, all of whom are inclined to shoot the basketball. So I would not overreact to the news. I like the time it came out. Hopefully you still get him at 15% or so. So I would make sure to have some Elf if this game stays close, which seems certainly uncertain. I was going to say unlikely, but I guess there's, we'll give him a 50% chance keeping this game close in the middle. He'd already been getting the lion's share of the minutes, and you could get 30 minutes out of Elf, and at, mid to high fours, which I think is his best price. You have a chance of smashing that. So I'm, again, cautiously optimistic when it comes to Elf. I would still on FanDuel rather play Jeff Teague to put down an immediate pivot choice I'm thinking about. Also, I got a couple questions today. We were talking about the Bucks. And do you like Marcus Morris because of the Bucks and 3-pointers? It is not like the Bucks give up massive amounts of 3-pointers. I don't have the stats in front of me, and we don't have time for me to go long into this, but it is the worst part of their defense. So it makes some sense to say, okay, let's look at opposing 3-point shooters on the other team, but appropriately contextualize it. I'm going to guess they're being one of the best defenses in the league. That they're like 20th in the league, but they're not, massively removed from being an average team against 3-pointers. So just because 5 people have asked me the same 3-point shooters against the Bucks question today, yeah, it's good. You ideally want the players you take against them to shoot 3-pointers, but it's not a, they're I'd be shocked if they're in the bottom 5, 6, 8 of the league. I'll look after we lock.
And that they've changed their defense somewhat since they used to give up more from the wing and elbow. It's not what it used to be. So.
Yeah, and they also replaced Bledsoe with George Hill, which both of whom are actually above average defenders in different ways. That's actually going to help your 3-point defense a little bit. There's all kinds of stuff there. So it's fine. I've seen it today in a couple questions with what do you think about Marcus Morris? Again, he's fine. I have blowout run concerns. You're now replacing the point guard who starts with him who never shoots the ball with a point guard who likes to shoot the ball. So, that's not ideal. Certainly not the end of the world. Yeah. So stuff. There you go.
What do you like at the high and the low for point guards on FanDuel?
At the high, I like Damian Lillard. At the medium, I like Jeff Teague. I have a feeling are going to be the first 2 names out of my mouth. I like Russell Westbrook, obviously, quite a bit. He's still well too cheap. The matchup is very good for him. He is projected to be owned higher than Harden. I would have more of the field than Harden, and playing them both, while obviously not impossible, gets less and less tenable as the number of games on the slate increases. But this is a Phoenix defense that is going to be worse than it has been. So I like Russell Westbrook quite a bit. I would end up having less than I would want most people to have in a vacuum because I would have a lot of James Harden. I prefer to play Jeff Teague to Elfrid Payton right now at 48. I slightly prefer him to Patrick Beverley at 47, though those are both fine options. And in 150 lineups, I would have somewhere to the range of, I don't know, 34 Jeff Teague to 18 Elfrid Payton to, 16 Patrick Beverley, so I wouldn't entirely eschew those guys. I think Ish Smith is still in play at 4,600. I'd have a couple shares of that. George Hill is an absolutely fine cash option at 44, but again, there's some issues with the blowout there. I can see getting a share or 2 of, say, Shabazz Napier and Kobe White. I'd have a share or 2 of. And I presume I'm about to see Eli Akobo in here somewhere, unless they randomly have him at shooting guard or some such. Akobo is a shooting guard, which is fair. He spent some time, which the issue with Eli Akobo on FanDuel is his name is not James Harden, and his name is not Lou Williams.
All right. How do you feel about Shabazz Napier?
He is usable. He is usable in a GPP right now. That's about it. I would prefer Elie Okobo. I would probably prefer Javon Carter as of right now. I would have some, because obviously that can work out for you. There's any number of ways the Suns rotation goes where you could get, Carter back in the starting rotation, and Okobo's rotation doesn't change whatsoever. They could end up playing next to each other for some amounts of this game if it goes small for parts, which it's going to. And it has a lot to do with, their upside and their usage is going to be tied, and even their minutes is going to be tied with are they dropping, Oubre down to the 4, and is Sarge going to play, and is Kaminsky going to play? So there's a lot of balls in the air right now. But I am fine having 5 or 10% Shabazz Napier. It would not be a priority for me.
All right, 4 minutes left. Favorite Sacramento big on FanDuel?
I will take Bagley over Holmes, although I imagine Dude is going to be owned. So actually, sorry, I have to contextualize everything. As far as a raw projection question, we finally saw them playing not astride each other. That has something to do with the guys being out, but Ariza should be back with the team, but Bogdanovich is out again. I think my best guess would be, we have him as like number 8 in ownership, but he's tied with a lot of guys in this 24 to 27% range. We have Bagley is very popular. So depending on where Richaun Holmes is, we have Richaun Holmes at half the ownership. I would rather play Richaun Holmes. So FanDuel, I think, was the question, but either way, so on FanDuel, I would probably play Richaun Holmes. I would probably rank them Holmes, Bagley, B elites as far as my interest of rolling them out there in a lineup.
All right, crikey, 4 minutes left. I gotta hit crunch here. Clark or Covington FanDuel tournaments?
Well, let's see. Where do we project Clark? Okay, so not markedly different. I would probably play Clark at that point. I have them very close, so I don't have a strong take there.
How much Bruce Brown is too much Bruce Brown?
I like Bruce Brown quite a bit as a player. The minutes obviously feel well secure now, so if someone said I was playing 100% Bruce Brown tonight, I wouldn't mind it. He's a very safe play. The price at like 4,900 it's really hard to imagine that's going to screw you too much. So yeah, go ahead and do that. I got no real issue with playing a lot of Bruce Brown. I think the upside is a little bit muted, and again, the opposition does deal best with guards. Their only competent defenders are on the outside, so I would rather try to get how much Markieff is too much Markieff, especially on FanDuel, and how much Drummond is too much Drummond. But Bruce Brown at his price looks very good with everything that's going on there.
All right, is Scal a good play with Melo out?
I'm not sure how the two have much to do with each other.
Can you play Scal?
You can play Scal. He costs 3K. There's any number of ways he gets out there and does some real damage. Scal is, sort of Christian Woody in that way. But Melo being out with Nasser Littleback and everything, I don't think has much to do with Scal. We don't see a lot of Scal next to Whiteside, and this isn't a matchup that would really call for it. So you can play Scal, but
Kennard and Lillard or Simmons and Oubre?
I'd play Simmons and Oubre in everything.
All right, I'm trying to get my upload in here. So
okay, sorry.
See anything?
I'm just scanning news, so I apologize if I'm missing some useful questions here.
worries.
Rudy Gay is in. I didn't rank him. I'd now be comfortable if you wanted to have a little. I am not over the moon for it, but he will play. Let me open up my full tweet data options here. See if we can get some late breaking news and make someone some money. Was there football today?
There is football today.
Wow.
We're in game 2 of 3.
It's exciting. I like it when the schedule gets a little fun towards the end of the year. They get a little wacky. Get a little bit crazy.
No,
I think we're.
Let's see if I can put this one in because I don't want all that, Giannis.
We're done. If it's not in, it's not in, my friend.
Oh, it was tears, so it must have worked out. There we are. We'll see. Maybe I didn't hit save. Let's hit save and see what they say. All right, let's look at some little ownership here.
Nice.
And see what we've
I am
got.
actually gonna download some ownership and tell me how many games we had right at lock. I'm inclined to say 1, but it could have been 2. And I am gonna look up opponent 3-point percentage. See if I was right about that. Maybe I went on a whole rant there that I wasn't right about.
It is 2. It's Washington, Philly, Chicago, Detroit.
Oh, Chicago, Detroit's at lock as well. Okay. All right. Well, you get that, and this should be okay. So currently, NBA opponents 3-point percentage this year. All right, Milwaukee is 22nd in the league. Okay, so about where I thought they should have been. But, to contextualize it a little bit, Denver's 3-point defense is insane. They're at 30.4% opponent 3-point makes. Next is Miami at 32.4. So a full 2% lump. So always weird for me that I've heard, should I take guys who take 3-pointers against the Bucks 604 times this year? And I have yet to hear that guy takes threes. I don't want him against Denver, which is not good analysis either, but is better analysis than I don't want to take 3-point shooters, or I want to take 3-point shooters against this team. They're 22nd in the league against it. But to contextualize those stats, the percentages, second is Miami at 32.4, then 32.8, then 33, so on and so forth. It really starts to dense up. All the teams around 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 are all in the 35s. Milwaukee is at 36.9, making them marginally better than Orlando. Orlando allows a higher percentage. I don't remember the last time someone said, again, Milwaukee does run at a very nice pace. So there's other reasons to dislike playing against Orlando. But Orlando, New Orleans, Memphis, Minnesota, Washington, Cleveland, New York, and Golden State all allow a higher percentage of 3-pointers made. But they're within a percentage point of the Kings and the Spurs and the Nets and the Hawks and the Rockets and the Pistons and the Suns, almost all of whom are playing tonight. So it is a not something I think should be heavily considered. Yes, if you're going against the Bucks, they are a very good defensive team, and that is their Achilles heel. So I get paying some attention to it, but again, maybe a bit much.
All right. Reminder, if you guys have not yet signed up, superdraft.io is the place to be. They are the presenting sponsor. If you use the promo code AWESEMO and deposit $100, they will instantly match you with $20 available in Superdraft cash to play immediately into any contest. If you do not use the promo code AWESEMO, you only get $10. So don't do that. Use the promo code AWESEMO. I see I missed the super chat. I'm sorry, but guy who did the $5 one, I owe you one. Remind me, Jack Perry.
What was it?
You got a freebie. He's at a family Christmas. DK GPP core plays. Well,
that's a broad question, and again, on a larger slate, and or one with ownership this dilute, if you will, there isn't a ton. So yeah. I guess Andre Drummond certainly started on DK as a core play, and also it doesn't have just as many pricing errors as FanDuel, frankly.
Yeah.
What do I think about Thon McCurt? Yeah, at this point, I don't mind Thon. Like, I don't like him, but he's 3,200, I want to say, in any sort of GPP context. I would rather a Kobo, because in that matchup, I think the upside is more attainable for him. But Thon McCurt, I would have projected for 16 fantasy points at 3,200. That's not a unreasonable number to think he gets on top of. But I guess Harden and Drummond, if I'm going to follow suit with other guys I talked about. Past that core play, FanDuel is easier to have core plays because you have even cheaper Lillard. You have Lillard, who's too cheap, Teague, who's too cheap, Williams, who's too cheap, Harden, who's too cheap, Oubre, who's too cheap, Markieff Morris, who's too cheap, and Drummond, who's too cheap. All relative price. So it's much easier to have a core plays list on FanDuel, where it's one of those nights where I'm like, this looks like the best lineup. Like my FanDuel GPP lineup, I'll just read it out because this stuff is locked right now. And again, I haven't touched it in a while, so I don't know if it would have changed with news. I ran, and this should not be a wild galloping surprise to anyone. Lillard, Teague, Williams, Harden, Oubre, Markieff, Bagley, Tucker, because he fit in when I was making it, and probably wouldn't have actually run it with Tucker, but there's nothing wrong with playing $5,000 PJ Tucker against the Suns on a site that gives you, 3 for steals and blocks. I'm fine with that. And Andre Drummond. Yeah. And again, sometimes I try to make the GPP lineups quality because, again, I am, because of my day job, legally not allowed to enter DFS contests. So I make these and then I delete them. I don't get to play them, although I suspect many people will have played this lineup. I don't know who the lowest owned guy in this lineup is. Teague, Lillard, Tucker won't be crazy, but I suspect many of these other guys are going to have carried some really, really significant ownership, as they should. But they're just well underpriced on FanDuel. So DK cores, yeah, I would. I'm curious. We get to find out Drummond now. We don't know about Harden yet.
Yeah.
I'm curious how high Drummond's ownership got to. I guess Luke Kennard are going to be on top here. I'm guessing you're about to tell me.
How many minutes do you think De'Aaron Fox will play on the back-to-back?
I'm at 27. I have very little confidence in that number, but I expect him to play, and I'm currently sitting on 27 as a number. He's fine. I ranked him as a C and a B. He is obviously going to continue to drop a little bit in price until he busts the crap out of that, but certainly a bit of a luxury buy tonight, I would say.
All right. So the number one player, of course, is Drummond. How high do you think he is?
I don't know about of course. I was going back and forth.
I'm sorry.
Drummond did no, it's fine. I said it was going to be. I assume Drummond and Kennard are on top. I don't know who's coming in after. I guess Bruce Brown will be pretty high too. But of these two games, none of Washington or Philly ended up looking that brilliant. We got the Rose. I originally said 30% Drummond earlier in the show. We got the Rose news, so I'll kick it to 36.
34.5.
Yeah, that feels about right. And it should be less, but I'm guessing we have 30% Luke Kennard.
34.
34? Way to go, Osmo projections, by the way, having him at 35. So, yeah, I get it. It is not hard for. I don't know how to put it. We had a show the other day where Josh and I went 2 hours, and he went, and his database work and his mind for basketball are brilliant. He's one of my favorite guys. He told me I had to play daily fantasy sports for the life of my daughter, and I could have 2 other guys on my team. Fairly sure one of them would be Josh. And it was interesting how over the course of the show, I kept spitting out numbers from my head of the odds this guy outscores this guy and the odds outscores this guy and these 2 guys versus this guy. And you can develop a program to do what I do in my head a lot of the time, which is basically, is this guy worth this ownership? Because there's not that many edges left in fantasy basketball. One of them is being lower on the guys who are too highly owned. Luke Kennard, for me, regardless of what happens tonight, is a little too owned at 34%. And it's not because he's a bad play. He projects just great. But he isn't that safe. And I know you're saying this is GPPs. I just care about upside. He's going to go out there against a bad Chicago team and have a huge role in the offense. There's no Derrick Rose. There's no Blake Griffin. What are you talking about? It's yeah, but it is not hard for me to conjure up images of a game where he plays 37 minutes and takes 18 shots and makes 7 of them because Dunn and Satoransky give him some trouble, and other than that has 1 or 2 rebounds because of the very nice rebounding centers in this game, and an assist, and gets 24.5 fantasy points, which is outscored by 39 players who cost less than $5,100 and are less owned than that. So for me, that number is a little bit too high. I think it should be about 25. I said before, if there was 15 or 20%, Luke Kennard, I'd be yeah, give me a little more than that. It's a very good spot for him. 30, 35 is a bit more of an overcorrection. So yeah, Drummond, it's really hard to fail. It's just really hard. So anyhow, it's the first thing that enters my mind when good chalk, bad chalk is really how likely is this guy to absolutely screw the pooch? Because hitting an upside is great and everything, but there's also the chance that when you don't play a guy, you're taking as much of a stance as when you play a guy. Like if you're like, tonight's going to be Zach LaVine night, which I've done a few times this year, and last time was the worst of those. He had 43 or 44 or whatever, but you're taking a stand on that guy. But it's just as easy for me sometimes to look at limited basketball players and what do you really need Luke Kennard to make a bucket load of shots here tonight, and if he doesn't, you're kind of sucking hind tit there. Andre Drummond can take 10 shots or 20 and can make 5 shots or 15 and still put up 40, 50, 60 fantasy points. So obviously different pricing categories and everything. Anyhow, I'll shut up now, but it's I just wanted to, explain it a little bit. And again, it is one of the things that gets talked about a ton in football and doesn't get talked about a ton in basketball is following the path of least resistance. You hear a lot of, it's a run funnel defense. They have really good cornerbacks and safeties, so they funnel production to the run, and that, applies a little bit in basketball. So when you have, Thon McCurr, but, Markieff Morris and Andre Drummond sucking up a lot of time down low, and they both have brilliant matchups. They have a couple guys who do it so there's just enough reasons for me to think, yeah, that's a little bit high for him to be what we thought was the highest scoring player, but in this case, the second highest scoring player on the slate. Not to mention, if you were playing massive amounts of Drummond, you've already gotten some leverage against that Kennard play. Like I would rather play Drummond and I assume lower owned Brown, although that's going to have swollen pretty big. And I would rather play Bruce Brown, even if they were the same ownership. I would rather have played Bruce Brown, by the way. So like if they were both owned 35%. And it cost the same amount, I would still rather have played Bruce Brown. I have him projected higher, and the likelihood of failing is a little bit lower. Still Bruce Brown, but sorry, I'm done now.
All right, number 3, Bruce Brown. What was he at?
26.
32.
Okay, so not that different. So yeah, again, that's still a little bit too high, but the usage on this team has to go somewhere. So one of these guys, one non-Drummond guy will be good. Maybe 2. Maybe you get Kennard and Markieff games. At least, so I like making sure I have one of those guys. How much is Markieff owned? I'm guessing he's at like half that. So I'll say 14 on Markieff Morris.
17.
Yeah, I would rather have that than either of the guards.
And there's one guy in between them.
Oh, there's only one in between those guys.
Yep.
Horford's too high. With that much Drummond, there's no way it can be Embiid. None of the value guys. I guess it could be Beal. It's not going to be... No way Thon gets that high. That guy hasn't even started yet. I'll say Brad Beal. $8,600 Brad Beal is a good buy. I'll go Bradley.
It is Brad Beal.
Yeah, 20-ish. Got to be in there somewhere.
Yep, he is 21.
You want to hear? Here's a funny stat that doesn't sound that important, but it'll tell you how easy it is to make money at DFS. Are you ready? What percent owned is Langston Galloway?
He is 2%.
I mean, like, it's...
but he was 40% last night, and he was bad, so we can't...
Right, no, I'm just like... People really think there is this massive gulf in talent between Langston Galloway and Luke Kennard, or massive gulf in minutes, or how do you don't get me wrong, I don't want massive amounts of and I'm really stuck on the word massive apparently, but I don't want huge gargantuan amounts of Langston Galloway, but yeah, I'll have more of the 2% owned guy who I didn't redo everything, but I imagine I'd have projected for all of 3.5 fantasy points less than a guy who costs well more than him and is 17 times as owned. Yeah, I'll play the other guy. So, yeah, it's really that simple. It's great. They pay me to just come out here and say duh things, but
I don't even think I ended up with Langston Galloway.
Yeah, and
yeah,
he's not good, and there's plenty of other guys in other games, and like it's not a must spot, but I just like as a simple example of why, people have short memories. It's a very normal thing. I'm not trying to sass anyone or give anybody crap, but like literally I was unaware of the ownerships yesterday. I followed the stuff. I watched most of the games, but I didn't have a show. So I was unaware of the ownerships. But you mentioned earlier that, Langston Galloway busted on people yesterday, and I don't know how big people think the gulf is between Langston Galloway and Luke Kennard, but there you go. So we'll see how it goes. And again, this is a take where I should be wrong more often than not. And that feels weird, but more often than not, Luke Kennard will be at least fine. So if Luke Kennard scores 30, 40 fantasy points tonight, and I don't think it's impossible he scores 40 fantasy points. I'd put the odds on that happening at and I wish Josh was here because he could contextualize this, but I'd put the odds. Wait, is Josh here? No, you're hosting.
No.
I would put the odds on Langston Galloway scoring 40 fantasy points in the high teens. I'd expect it to be in the 15 to 20% range. So it's something that's going to happen quite a bit. But I'd also have the odds of him scoring under 20% as under 20 fantasy points, probably a little higher than that. And a whole gulf in the middle that doesn't really hurt you that much. So I don't know. That's just how that math works out for me. But point being, Langston Galloway can score 40 fantasy points. Not as often as Luke Kennard, but anyhow, we'll see how that game plays out. And I'm sure someone's messaging me right now that Luke Kennard has 31 fantasy points. I don't want to look while we're still doing the ownership thing, though. But
that's it of all the interesting ones. Embiid was 11, Sato was 10, Simmons was 9, Dunn was 6.
Who else is interesting? Where'd Thon McCurr end up?
McCurr is 3.
That's fine. Would have been 2, but he had a decent game yesterday. I bet
Horford is 1.5, Brown is 1, Carter is 1.
Where's Isaiah Thomas?
I think 1.7.
Yeah, again, that shouldn't be much more than that. I mean, it's a bad matchup for the
Derrick Rose, 0.6.
0.6.
Jordan McRae, Blake Griffin, Thomas Bryant, Moritz Wagner, and Rui Hachimura. You all played yourselves.
Wow. I mean, they didn't play themselves. They played basketball, but the people who picked them there. What's Davis Bertans at? Where's Davis? Wait, you didn't say Davis.
Well, Davis Bertans forgot how to shoot. He forgot how to make the shots. He's at 2.5.
Oh, did he have a bad game?
He's had a couple. Well, he's entirely point-based. He needs to go 6 of 12 from 3 before he's going to pay off his new numbers.
Yeah, I've been. You occasionally get those exceptional games. We had the Ben McLemore game earlier this year.
Bucks starting lineup: DiVincenzo, Middleton, Antetokounmpo, Ilyasova, and Brolo.
Wait, say that again.
Ilyasova is starting per Otto Einders. Does that do anything for us? Would you get rid of Cam Johnson or somebody in the later game?
18 after already? I would certainly rather play him over Cam Johnson as stride news. If Sarge was out, I would rather play Cam Johnson. That would be the thing. And I believe Sarge plays.
I think he plays too.
So for that reason, I would be at, Jesus Christ. Okay, I don't even have a model for that. It's going to take a minute, but since we're live, I don't like to duck. So let's get into it a little bit here. All right, load that.
Davis probable for tomorrow. JaMychal Green out tonight. What do we got left? We got 550.
Well, it's a Saturday night with football, so yeah, and we're 20 minutes post lock. So, yep, that's not terribly shocking. All right. This is going to take me about 90 seconds. I apologize.
All right. While you're doing that, reminder everybody, we start off with 3 hours of NFL football tomorrow at 10 a.m. You get Alex Baker, you get Ben Rasa, and Laffy D, Dave Loughran himself, for the first hour and 20 or so. And then you get about a 35-40-minute show with Nolan Kelly and Sam. Are going to be doing the inactives. And then taking you down the home stretch will be one Chris Spags and Josh Engelman on Live Before Lock. You will get Fast Eddie and myself again tomorrow for NBA Live Before Lock. And then that feels like we need another show. Oh, that's right. NFL Live Before Lock, Sunday Night Showdown. That'll be at 7:30. And then, busy day. Busy day. I'm looking and seeing what time Eddie and I are going to go on tomorrow. Have they posted games yet? The sites have not yet posted games, so we don't know for sure. But
can you grab me Ursan's prices while I project this out?
Yes, I can do that. Let me open my little doodad here.
Let's see, some of these guys have started, so I don't need to compare those.
All right, I've got them for all three sites when you're ready.
What are they?
33 on DK.
That's nice.
38 on FanDuel. Now we can't do much about it, but there are later slates. And 11 on Yahoo.
Yeah, he's pretty nice on both those sites. He'd be pretty close to my favorite value play. I have him now. Lopez is in and Antetokounmpo is in, so it's not going to be as much of a minute smorgasbord as I would like. And he doesn't play a blowout, which is not unlikely in this game. So keep that all in mind. I have him at 21 minutes. He's only exceeded 22 or 23. I want to say once that one game where he had 27, where he started with Giannis absent. But he's a fine value play. I would have him over McCurr, who has already obviously begun his contest. I'd rather have him than a Kobo Carter. Those guys right now. I'd still be more comfortable with $3,800 for Daniel House. And I don't think he's a must to throw in there. He's going to be projected pretty close to 20 fantasy points in 20 minutes. But for $3,300, that's a good number and a pretty great matchup there. Yeah. So there you go. And it's reasonable to have to roll back your exposure to George Hill at this point. Because possibilities of him starting, you're looking at a few extra minutes. Now he doesn't start, doesn't close in a blowout. Things are getting a little wonky there. Drummond with 12 in the first 6 minutes. Bruce Brown with 8. Oh, this lineup didn't have Kennard in it. Let me find a Kennard lineup and see if he's doing anything. 7 for Kennard? Pretty good.
7.2. 9.2.
Oh, just made a bucket.
Yep.
They're going off. Now you go, Lukey. Tony Snell with 2. They may all be good, and he may still not be good enough. Like he needs to outscore Bruce Brown. Can we agree? Or be the best and second best plays on this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see how it goes. That's still just a little bit too high, but it wasn't one of those days where there was anything particularly egregious. So just got to sort of round some edges and wait for news to break. But yeah, I would like Ursan quite a bit. And if you have a DK lineup, I think he's a fine guy to swap onto. He won't be overly owned, and there's real upside there.
All right, well, with that, gamers, we are going to get on out of here. You can follow Eddie at FastEddieFear on Twitter. I'm at EMACDFS, and it is Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers,